In November 1984, he grabbed her, blindfolded her, and brought her back to his apartment. For the next 26 hours, she endured unthinkable horror. He raped her repeatedly, keeping her captive with no idea if she'd ever leave alive. But Lisa wasn't just a victim, she was smart, observant, and determined to survive. Welcome to the Murder Maze, the place where we uncover the darkest minds in true crime. Today, we're diving deep into the twisted world of Bobby Joe Long, a man who began as a thief and rapist, but evolved into one of Florida's deadliest serial killers. Bobby Joe Long was born on October 14, 1953, in Canova, West Virginia. From the start, his life was filled with pain and confusion. His parents divorced when he was just 2 years old. That's when things began to go wrong. He lived with his mother, but their relationship wasn't normal. They shared a bed into his early teens. She worked at bars and often brought different men home. Bobby watched it all. It created a twisted image of women in his mind, something that would haunt his victims decades later. He also had a condition called Klinefelter syndrome, a genetic disorder where boys are born with an extra X chromosome. It made him grow breasts during puberty. Kids bullied him, called him names, and mocked his appearance. It filled him with shame. With every insult, Bobby built up a quiet rage that would one day explode. Between ages 5 and 13, Bobby suffered multiple serious head injuries. He fell off a swing, hit his head in car crashes, and lost consciousness more than once. Doctors believe those injuries permanently changed his brain, especially the areas that control impulse, anger, and empathy. Friends and family noticed the shift. He became moody, violent, and obsessive. What began as a troubled boy was slowly turning into something far more dangerous. In his 20s, Long moved to Florida, got married, and had 2 kids. But the marriage was a disaster. He was controlling, jealous, and abusive. His wife left him. That's when Bobby changed. Alone and angry, he started a new hobby, reading classified ads in newspapers. But not to buy or sell anything. He used them to find women, often those selling furniture or appliances, and attack them in their homes. He became known as the classified ad rapist. He was smart, quiet, and methodical. Police believe he raped over 50 women during this time, and no one saw it coming. Classified ad rapes. It happened in the mid-1970s, shortly after his marriage began to fall apart. He was living in Florida, unemployed, and growing more bitter by the day. His violent fantasies, fueled by deep resentment toward women, started to turn into actions. This particular crime involved Long responding to a classified newspaper ad placed by a woman selling furniture. Back then, classified ads were common ways to sell personal items from home. Women often listed their home addresses or phone numbers, not knowing people who would naturally invite someone into their homes. He used these ads as a gateway, pretending to be interested in buying what they were selling, all the while hiding his true intentions. Once inside their homes, he would overpower them, often using brutal force. He would rape his victims, then quickly flee, leaving little evidence behind. His victims were often left traumatized but without the means to identify him. Though he no longer saw women as victims to assault and discard, he began killing them. The transition from rapist to murderer was quick, brutal, and marked by a series of increasingly horrific crimes that would haunt the Tampa Bay, a way to take back control over the women who had humiliated or rejected him throughout his life. In March 1984, Bobby Joe Long's first known murder occurred. Lisa McVeigh wasn't the only survivor of Long's violence. His early victims were the unfortunate women who never had the chance to fight back. His method was simple but deadly. He would target women walking alone, often sex workers or those who appeared vulnerable. His attacks followed a recognizable pattern. Abduction. Long would approach women under the guise of offering a ride or simply pretending to show interest. If they accepted, he would quickly overpower them once they were in his vehicle. His car became a cage, trapping them without escape. Rape and strangulation. Once he had control, Long would drive his victims to secluded, wooded areas, often far from any help. Once there, he would rape them, often beating and choking them in the process. His most common method of murder was strangulation, using a ligature or his bare hands, which ensured the victim died slowly and painfully. Strangulation also minimized physical signs of injury, leaving less evidence behind. Disposal of the bodies. After killing them, Long would discard the bodies in remote locations, making them difficult to find. Most of his victims were left partially clothed, as he had stripped them during the assault. The way the bodies were found, discarded. Michelle Sims was a 22-year-old woman who became one of Long's first confirmed murders. She was a sex worker, walking alone when Long approached her in his car. He abducted her, drove her to a secluded area, and proceeded to assault her. Afterward, he strangled Michelle to death. Her body was discovered in a wooded area in the middle of May 1984. She was the first victim that truly stood out to investigators, as her case marked a clear pattern, one that Long would repeat throughout his killing spree. Victim 2. Lisa McVeigh's story is one of survival, resilience, and courage. On November 3, 1984, Lisa, a 17-year-old girl, was abducted by Long while riding her bike home after work. Unlike Long's earlier victims, Lisa fought back with her mind, not her body. Her attack followed a similar pattern. Long approached her, forced her into his car, and drove her to his apartment. There, he blindfolded her, tied her up, and subjected her to brutal sexual assault for hours. But Lisa stayed calm and observed every detail she could about Long's appearance, his voice, and the layout of his apartment. What set Lisa apart from Long's other victims was her ability to stay focused despite the brutality she was enduring. She left fingerprints on surfaces, purposefully leaving clues for the police to find. She memorized everything: the furniture in the apartment, the sound of Long's voice, even the way he smelled. When Long finally released her, Lisa immediately went to the police. Her detailed report helped authorities identify Long and eventually led to his arrest. Victim 3. Kim Swan was a 19-year-old woman who was abducted and murdered by Long in July 1984. She was walking alone, a common occurrence for Long's victims, when he approached her in his car. Like his previous victims, Kim was overpowered and driven to a remote location, where Long raped and strangled her. Her body was later found in a wooded area off the highway. She had been strangled with a tight ligature, a method Long often used to strangle his victims to avoid leaving marks that would lead to him. Kim's case further solidified the chilling nature of Long's killings. He was careful, methodical, and increasingly brazen. The attacks were escalating, and the police were starting to realize they were dealing with a serial predator. Victim 4. Another strangler's victim. The next victim was found in August of 1984, though details of her identity remain unclear in the public record. She was likely another sex worker or vulnerable woman who Long targeted. Once again, his attack followed the same pattern: abduction, rape, and strangulation. Her body, like the others, was dumped in a remote location, her life extinguished in the quietest of ways, through strangulation. At this point, authorities had begun to suspect that a serial killer was at work, but they still didn't have enough evidence to identify Long. The final victim, Bobby Joe Long's killing spree, came to an abrupt end after he abducted and assaulted Lisa McVeigh in November 1984. While Lisa survived, her bravery brought Long's crimes into the open. She was able to provide specific details about his apartment, his habits, and even the car he drove. Long was soon arrested, and with his confession, investigators were able to link him to several other unsolved cases. Long admitted to killing at least 10 women between March and November 1984, and it was later revealed that he may have been responsible for other attacks spanning several years. His victims were often murdered and then disposed of in remote areas, their bodies discarded like trash. After months of terrorizing Florida, Bobby Joe Long's reign of violence came to a sudden and dramatic end. It was not the typical catching of a criminal story. Long's arrest involved a mixture of luck, bravery, and crucial investigative work that ultimately led to him being stopped before he could kill again. Lisa McVeigh's survival, the pivotal moment that would lead to Bobby Joe Long's downfall, began on November 3, 1984, when he abducted 17-year-old Lisa McVeigh. While other victims had been killed with terrifying efficiency, Lisa's ability to survive and retain key details of her captor's appearance and behavior proved to be a game-changer. For over 24 hours, Lisa was held captive in Long's apartment, enduring repeated assaults. But instead of succumbing to fear, Lisa made a conscious decision to observe and remember everything about her attacker. She noticed small details about his apartment, his car, his voice, and his physical appearance. Most crucially, she left fingerprints on various surfaces to ensure there was physical evidence that could be traced back to him. Lisa's bravery. Reporting to the police when Long finally released Lisa, she immediately went to the police. Her testimony was crucial because it provided investigators with very specific details about Long's apartment and vehicle, details no one could have known unless they had been in his home. Lisa's detailed account described Long's car in particular, a Chevrolet Corvette, which was crucial because this was a distinctive vehicle that police could use to narrow down potential suspects. Lisa's bravery was the catalyst. Her willingness to face the terrifying memory of her captor and recount the experience in such detail ultimately led the police to Bobby Joe Long. Linking Long to the murders at first, authorities were cautious. But Lisa's description of Long's apartment, his Corvette, and the way he interacted with her led investigators to believe they had a potential suspect. They then reviewed unsolved rape and murder cases from earlier in the year, and a pattern began to emerge. Long fit the description of the man who had been abducting, raping, and murdering women all over Florida. Police quickly identified Bobby Joe Long. His vehicle and apartment matched the details Lisa provided, and investigators realized they had their man. They also found out that Long had a history of violent crime, including previous rape charges that had never been fully prosecuted. The arrest, November 16, 1984. The arrest took place on November 16, 1984. By this time, Bobby Joe Long was already a suspect in multiple cases, but his arrest was publicized immediately. What came next shocked the world. Bobby Joe Long confessed to killing at least 10 women, and he gave detailed accounts of each crime. Long's confession, cold and detached during his interrogation, Bobby Joe Long was unnervingly calm, showing no remorse for his actions. When asked about his victims, he spoke matter-of-factly, describing the murders in detail. He even admitted to having taken trophies from his victims, jewelry, clothing, and other personal items, which were later found in his apartment. Long's confession helped law enforcement link him to the series of unsolved murders that had terrified Florida. The police were able to match DNA evidence, fingerprints, and other forensic evidence from Long's apartment to the bodies of the women he had killed. His calmness during his arrest and confession shocked everyone involved. Long was not the frantic, remorseful figure many might expect. Instead, he was eerily detached, as if his killings were no more than an unpleasant task he had completed. Bobby Joe Long's arrest marked the end of a terror spree that lasted 9 months. It also revealed the true extent of his crimes. He had not only murdered at least 10 women, but had committed dozens of rapes. Law enforcement officials believe he may have been responsible for more victims, but many of the cases went unsolved due to the nature of his attacks. His arrest also helped bring closure to the families of his victims, many of whom had been desperately searching for answers. It was Lisa McVeigh's bravery, though, that played the key role in bringing him to justice. Without her detailed testimony and quick thinking, Bobby Joe Long might have continued his killing spree. Bobby Joe Long's arrest marked the end of a horrific chapter in Florida's history. It was only through the courage of one young woman, Lisa McVeigh, that the authorities were able to track him down. His capture was a combination of luck, persistence, and investigative skill, but above all, it was the result of a survivor's will to fight back. Long's arrest brought relief to a terrified public and ended the terror that had gripped the Tampa Bay area for nearly a year.